Hello and welcome to Nerdy Birdie. This is our actually fourth installment of Nerdy Birdie, and we are graciously have Chris Timm, Mr. PSA himself at Sondela Consulting joining us today. If you haven't joined us previously, this webinar series is success focused. We're showing you start to finish examples of successful integrations with our synthesized vendors and channel partners, as well as taking in getting into the nitty gritty with nerdy birdies themselves, experts within the industry like Chris, um, as we, ruffle the feathers, so to speak. It's one thing to get an integration or your PSA off the ground, but it's quite another to see it truly take flight. I am a recovering MSP in myself of 6+ years. I know and empathize with you all as just the breadth and how difficult it is to run a PSA and all these tools in the toolkit just to help you achieve that operational efficiency and scale your business. Your PSA tool is one of those, and quite often the hardest to implement. And this is where Chris and I are going to get into the nitty gritty in just that PSA profitability and maximizing your profitability maximizing the use of your PSA tool. So without further ado, we're just going to jump into the agenda. And then this is where we're going to do a brief introduction into myself, Chris, and we're going to then jump into PSA profitability, that 101 lecture, if you will, as to why a PSA and what you need in order to do need to do in order to really use your PSA in as best as you can. So we're going to dive into that. We're also going to then dive into the importance of managing your contracts within your PSA. We right now, Gradient has synthesized billing, a reconciliation solution to then make sure that you get paid for everything that you do. So we're taking a deep dive into the importance of managing your contracts at a minimum. So when I say managing your contracts, it truly is just that. Managing your services, your reoccurring agreements or contracts, depending on which PSA you use. And then ultimately, we don't really care if you bill out of your PSA or through a third party like QuickBooks, Xero, whatever it may be. We're effectively just there to then true up your quantities so you get paid for everything that you do, you have invoice accuracy, and you're effectively just being more efficient. You're maturing as an MSP. You're then streamlining those billing processes so you get paid on time and so on and so forth. We're going to then jump into a quick little demo of synthesized billing if this happens just to be your first time seeing our solution. And we're going to then follow that up with a Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to flip it over to the nerdy birdie himself, aka also known as Mr. PSA, Chris Timm. He's the technical director at Sondela Consulting and author of PSA Profitability, the ultimate guide to profitability with your PSA tool. Fantastic read. I would really encourage for anyone that's on this call or watching this recording, pick up that book. You have a soft cover available or a ebook, if you will, available through Amazon. Is that right, Chris?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so why don't you just I kind of highlighted a couple of things there, but why don't you just expand on that and as to who you are, where you came from, what you do, and for those viewers that don't know you or maybe they do, just expand on who you are there.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. So yeah, for those people who don't know me, I am an ex-MSP business owner. I ran and owned and sold an MSP business back in 2012. And then I was approached by Autotask in the UK, just as they were kind of starting up in the UK to head up their technical teams in the UK. So I built the pre-sales team and the implementation and consulting teams. I built all of those teams at Autotask in the UK. And then around sort of now almost 6 years ago, I went out on my own as an independent MSP consultant, specifically helping MSPs to understand how to get the best out of PSA tools, but specifically around Autotask. Having worked at the company, that's the tool I know. And then just as COVID hit, I decided, seeing as we were in lockdown and there wasn't a huge amount else to do, I decided it would be a good idea to write a book. So I wrote the book, The PSA Profitability, which kind of goes through everything about how to become a profitable MSP. So what do you need to put into your PSA tool in order to, to get profitability information out of it, and how do you go about doing all of that? So that's what the book covers. And as you said, Bryan, it is available on Amazon in both paperback version and on Kindle. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's the ultimate guide to PSA profitability. You cover that end-to-end life cycle management of your PSA, and effectively just using it as best as you can. Obviously highlighting on the importance of billing and contract management and so on and so forth, and some things that we're going to be highlighting today. But really, it's a quick read, but a very powerful guide just to maximize profitability with your PSA tool. So really encourage you to pick up that book, give it a read. And again, it's a short read, but very powerful in that. Lots of good messaging there. And so now, as far as me, I am, like I said, a coined recovering MSP. So I come from an MSP of 6+ years. I've been in the whole RevOps side of things, so working within the trenches, so to speak, with billing reconciliation, operations, so on and so forth, implementations and migrations of PSAs. I think I've done like 3 of them in my days. So no stranger to the importance of your PSA tool and how to maximize that as best as possible. But I am also now, in my current role, manager of partner success at Gradient MSP. So I am just solely here, just dedicated to help you as an MSP realize the full value of the Synthesize platform. Now, I'll highlight, obviously, the Synthesize billing module and how that then rolls into PSA profitability and making sure that you get paid for everything that you do. But just an FYI, we are going to make a big splash at DattoCon. We're only 1 week away from that. So I look forward to seeing you all at DattoCon. Come swing by our booth. We have a big pre-day presentation there where we will be announcing a few things. So be on the lookout from news at DattoCon and all our socials. If you haven't already followed us on LinkedIn or Twitter, please do so. We're rapidly growing. Yes, we are a startup, but there's some really, really awesome things coming on the roadmap here. So without now that I kicked that off, let's just jump into that of PSA profitability. Let's talk about, the 101 tutorial, if you will. We won't give away too much because we just encourage you to pick up Chris Timm's book, PSA Profitability, just because we don't want to share too much. But let's get into the nitty gritty as to PSA profitability. Let's get into the nerdy nitty gritty with the nerdy birdie himself, Chris Timm. I'm going to stop sharing. This will give you some time here for you to get set up with your presentation there, Chris. But let's talk about PSA profitability. That's such a broad topic in itself, talking about PSA profitability and how to really use the tool as best as you can. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you. You can get started here.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Yeah, so let's look at profitability 101. And you mentioned about you know, giving away information, and I'm quite happy to kind of give it all away. It's all in the book anyway.
Mhm.
So if people want to buy the book and read it, great. If not, if they want to get the information from here, that's fine too. But really, there's a couple of things that we need to get entered into the PSA tool. So some of the things I wanted to kind of talk about today are things like costs.
Mhm.
Why do we need to have costs entered into the system? And then I'm going to talk about burden. So what is burden rate? How do we kind of enter this? Why do we need this information in the PSA tool? Then looking at kind of entering time against tickets, that kind of thing, and then going into reporting. So I'm actually going to jump a few slides here, because what I really want to do is talk about. Sorry, I'm actually going to jump back to the slide. What I want to do in here is talk about what needs to be entered into the PSA tool. So there's two fundamental things that we need to enter in order to become profitable, or at least in order to get profitability information out of the system. So the two most fundamental things we need to put into the system is costs. Now I've put into there engineer costs, burden rates, and things like products and services. So a lot of people say to me, well, why do I need to enter my engineer costs into the system? Well, engineers cost you money, right? You pay them a salary. They consuming electricity, all these kind of things. So they're costing you as a business money, and so you've got to take into account their cost, because when you then entering the time against a ticket in the PSA tool, you're going to need to know how much that time is costing. So a real, very basic example of how things work in a PSA tool is it takes profitability minuses all the costs, and that gives, it takes revenue minus costs, and that gives you the profitability. So for example, if your engineer cost is $40 an hour and you've got a contract that is $400 a month, all it takes is entering 11 hours of time against that contract, and that contract is not profitable. Equally, if you were billing $100 an hour to your customer, and your engineer is costing $40 an hour, then you're making a $60 profit against that engineer. So it's as simple as that as to how it works it out. But if you do not have those engineer costs entered in there, and then you have your engineers just merrily adding time to anything they want, you're going to be able to capture that they've spent an hour of time, but you're not going to be able to understand how much that time has cost, and whether that, whether there's any kind of profitability in that contract or not.
So let's
So the other thing,
let's just stop right there for a second, and let's just talk about contract management in itself. Why is it so important to manage your contracts within your PSA? Because I think this is where there are still a lot of MSPs that are just using their PSA solely as a service desk. So they don't necessarily even have their contracts or their recurring services and products baked into their PSA, and they're doing this out of, say, their accounting package, QuickBooks, Zero, whatever it may be. So let's just touch on that for a second, just because you're right. Like PSA profitability, having your single source of truth be your PSA is quite essential for you to then scale your business. And so this is where having those costs in your time and materials associated to your contract, and then all of your services baked in as well. This is where you can then build upon that and make better business decisions in understanding your cost of goods sold. How profitable are you with that existing contract per client? So you can make better decisions, better business decisions associated to not only your resale stack, maximizing your profits and margins when it comes to that, but also identifying if there are delinquent clients where they're opening tickets up on an end and chewing up all of that time associated to those contracts. So let's just touch on that for a second. Let's call it out. If you're an MSP that are not typically managing your clients or your return services within your PSA, why? Why are you doing that? Obviously, there is a simpler way of doing that within, say, maybe your QuickBooks or your accounting packages. Yeah, it might be simpler and it's just on a recurring schedule, but you're losing so much insight and granularity into your services and your time and materials. Whereas like this is the importance of doing that within your
Mm,
PSA. Like I just got off a call with a partner of ours where they just we had a conversation about they currently bill everything out of QuickBooks Desktop, and are just simply using their PSA as a service desk, and their technicians are at a loss when they have those calls or those client conversations like, oh, I just picked up my latest bill, like why am I being charged for this X amount, and so on and so forth. Having that in one singular view within your PSA, it not only benefits you from better reporting and whatnot, but it also affects your operations, your technicians, having insights into those things so they can have those client conversations and be able to then close the loop when those conversations come up. So we can expand on this on a number of ways, but I think this is just it. Like the importance of having those costs, those burden rates, those overhead, your products and services all baked into your PSA, where you can then see the extended benefit of all of these things. I just wanted to interrupt you there, Chris, because I'm passionate about this, and I think
mm,
when it comes to running an MSP, your PSA, let's face it, your PSA is your single source of truth, or it should be. Your documentation manager is often integrated with that of your PSA. And let's face it, your RMM tool, those three things, quite honestly, if they're seamlessly integrated with one another, and you're using and you're leveraging your PSA as best as you can, this is where you can then see that growth. You can then scale your business, all your processes. Now, we're talking billing processes today more specifically, but let's talk about your service desk, your ticket management, your project management. Like everything is baked into your PSA or should be, because that's where you're going to see your greatest efficiencies come out of that. And this is where you truly can maximize profitability with your PSA tool. Now, I just went on a tangent there, so I apologize. But again, I'm just really passionate about this
mm.
topic. So,
No, I mean, and I agree. And you alluded to something earlier on about you know, people using PSA tools as a service desk. Well, you know, to those people, I say it's the most expensive service desk you'll ever buy because, you know, PSA tools are expensive. They cost a lot of money, and if you're only going to use them as a service desk, you may as well go and use Zendesk or, you know, one of those other um, uh, you know, service desk tools, which are great at doing service desks. But a PSA tool is not a service desk.
mhm,
And in fact, I don't even like using the word PSA. I know it's a kind of an industry acronym that we all use, but I prefer to use the word business management platform because that's really what it is. It's a platform that manages your entire business. So, you know, right from kind of tracking all of your opportunities in there to all of your contract management, as well as you know, doing all of your tickets, billing through the system, project management, all of that kind of stuff, because that's where you're going to be able to see, you know, the real true profitability of your business by having
mhm,
things like costs, all of those things entered in there. You know, another perfect example as to why you would use a PSA tool for things outside of the service desk would be, and I do this myself. So any opportunity that I get, I actually have a pre-sales ticket that I use so I can track how much time I've spent on it, how much my time has cost me, you know, and if I then lose the opportunity, I'd be able to say, you know, okay, I spent, you know, 5 hours on this opportunity and I didn't even win the business, or, you know, I spent 10 hours on it and I did win the business. So it's going to take me, you know, X amount of time to break even. Those kind of things I'm going to be able to very, very quickly see by using my PSA tool for things. And I know you could argue that is using it as a service desk because there's a ticket in there, but there's also an opportunity and there's costs and there's all these kinds of things in there. Putting just billing through your QuickBooks or Zero or any of those tools you're not going to be able to know what those engineer costs are. Those have to come in from the PSA tool, and all that the PSA tool is actually going to feed through into the accounting package is, you know, what you're actually billing your customer. But looking at things like, you know, how much does the stuff cost me? Which engineer is the most profitable? Which engineer is the least profitable? Which customer is the most profitable? All that kind of stuff. Your QuickBooks and what have you is not going to give you that information, but your PSA tool is going to have that information if you have all of that entered into the system in the first place.
Yeah, and to get there is a challenge in itself, because out of the box, this is why Sondela exists in the first place, right? Is to really peel back those layers and identify exactly what matters most to you as an MSP, and make sure that you have that granularity so you can make better business decisions with reporting, having better insights into your your ticket queue and your technicians, and just the spread of costs and revenue per technician or whatever, what have you. So yeah, reporting, let's face it, is really important for you to then identify issues or what have you, to really make better business decisions and grow your MSP. So no question.
Yeah, and I call that fact-based decision making, right?
Hmm.
Because you know your PSA tool is going to give you the facts of what's going on in your business, allowing you to then make decisions based on those facts. So you know, like I said earlier on, if you've got an engineer that you're paying $40 an hour to, and you've got a customer that is $400, and your engineer's entered 11 hours of time, that contract isn't profitable. So, you know, as a business owner, you could now look at that and say, okay, well, there's a couple of things I need to do. Maybe I need to use a cheaper resource, you know, to manage that customer, or to do all the tickets if I can, or maybe I need to up the contract, right? Because if I'm only charging them $400 and I'm doing 11 hours every month, and I'm no longer profitable, then something's got to give, right? I've got to go back to the customer and say, you know, I need to increase the price of your contract every month. But that information is going to be there for you, whatever it is, for you to be able to get that information really, really quickly. And it's not just the burden costs either that we could take into account. We're also taking into account the cost of the services as well. And so many times I see people, you know, having a service line in their PSA tool for Microsoft 365 with a cost of zero. So now what they're doing is going, well, okay, I'm selling it to the customer at $5 or $10, whatever it is, but there's no cost against it. So, so there needs to be a cost against every single thing of what you've paid for it. And those costs need to also be updated regularly. So, you know, it's no point kind of going, okay, well, when I set the contract up 3 years ago, I paid $5 for Microsoft 365, and now I pay $8, and still kind of leaving it in as $5 because Autotask is, or ConnectWise or any of these other PSA tools are always going to see that as whatever that cost is entered into the system, and it's going to base the profitability on that. So it's, and you know, and that's where tools like Gradients and these kind of things come in, because it's going to then integrate and sync with you know, Microsoft is going to bring all of those SKUs in. It's going to bring in the costs and the all of those kind of things, and update your contract accordingly, so you'll always have that stuff up to date. And that then, even, you know, again, what that would then do is now in that same scenario I used, where you've got an engineer that you're paying $40 an hour and you're charging $400 a month, but now you're spending $100 on services, Microsoft 365 and backup and antivirus and all these kind of things. So actually, you know, your engineer is going to now even need to enter less time against that contract in order for it to not be profitable. So you know, you're going to have that information very, very quickly to hand to be able to find that out quickly. And you wouldn't be able to do that if everything was entered in your accounting tool and didn't start out in your PSA.
Absolutely. So let's take this back. I don't know if there's anything else you want to share there, Chris, because we're going through this quite fast, seemingly. So might have
Yeah.
to have another time for for you to join the Nerdy Birdie again and go get into the nitty gritty some more as far as PSA profitability. But when it comes down to MSPs today that are just really only kind of getting their feet wet with their PSA and only using it truly as a service desk right now, for them to then realize the full benefit of synthesized platform, Gradient, our billing module, soon to be launched alerts module come the end of September, FYI. How do they get there? It's one thing from like when I talk when I consulted previous clients when I was working at MSP, it often came down to people. And let's face it, change management and trying to swing people's existing processes and whatnot to that of something that, let's face it, requires some effort to get there. For them to realize that full potential out of their PSA or the synthesized platform, if we're talking just change control, people management, if they've been doing it this way for the last 10 years and what currently works for them is going well, but we know truly that for them to scale that process, for them to then be as profitable as possible, change needs to happen. And so how can we get buy-in from every stakeholder within an MSP, within an organization, or within an organization to then best handle that migration of, say, going from QuickBooks to that of your PSA? And when I say like billing on your PSA, you don't have to invoice out your be through your PSA. It could be through a third party. It really doesn't matter. What we're kind of getting down to is just managing at the bare minimum, managing your client contracts, your agreements, your recurring invoices, whatever PSA you use. Obviously, there's different nomenclature for that, but that's the bare minimum of using and taking advantage of our synthesized platform. But like this is where like just people management and getting buy-in. How do we go about that, Chris?
That's a great question, and it's a question which probably doesn't have a very easy or short answer. Um, but I think it comes right back to the beginning, right? To the decision as to whether to use a PSA tool. And I actually allude to this in the book, is that
Mm-hmm.
very often, somebody will a business owner will make the decision to use a PSA tool. But they look at it, like you said earlier on, as a service desk. So they don't get buy-in from anyone else. They basically just say, well, we need a tool that's going to allow us to manage tickets and do tickets and that kind of thing. And very often they hand that over to the service delivery manager, whose job it is to then go and find a PSA tool. So they're not getting the buy-in from every other department, But before you make those decisions on which PSA tool you have, when you're having demos with the PSA vendors and all these kind of things, you need to bring in every every stakeholder in the business. So whether
Mm-hmm.
that be the financial people, so they can see how the contracts are managed, they can see how that stuff pushes through to QuickBooks or Xero or whichever accounting tool you're using. But also bring in your project management team, to be able to understand how projects work within the system.
Mm-hmm.
And then what the crossover is between all of those modules. So where does where does the job of the service desk engineer end, and where does the billing start? So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of understanding all of those and bringing all of those stakeholders in right at the beginning. So, and that's easy to say if you don't have a PSA tool, but what if you already have one? And I guess
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're kind of alluding to, is if you've already
Mm-hmm.
got a PSA tool, how do you get people to buy in? And I think a lot of it is, for those people that are using QuickBooks and all these things because they've been doing it that way for many, many years, is, just go back to basics and say, okay, what information are we able to get out of QuickBooks? Is that information sufficient? Can we do this in a different way? You know, get, can we get profitability information in a different way, which you absolutely can from your PSA tool? And then to go back and get those stakeholders in the business, those people who are doing the finance, and then saying, okay, how do we manage all of this? What do we need to do? So get those people involved. And that's where, just a shameless plug, but that's where I come in, right? That's something where somebody like myself will come in and say, okay, let's go back to basics. Let's get all the people in the room that we need. Let's talk to the financial people. Let's say to them, right, this is what contract management is all about. This is how you should be managing your contracts. This is how you should be looking at profitability. And then this is how, like you say, where you should be billing the stuff through the system, and then pushing the invoices into your whatever accounting tool it is that you're using, and sending the invoice from there. So you can still use the accounting tool, and in fact you should still be using the accounting tool, but you're doing all the other stuff that's relating to contract management and all that. You're doing that inside your PSA tool. So it's just a matter of kind of going back to basics and saying, okay, what is it that we're trying to achieve? Are we able to get that information from the tools we're currently using? If not, how do we do this in a better way? And either engage with the vendors or engage with a consultant or whatever the case might be, or use a tool like Radiant to kind of allow you to get that information, so you can start to see some of those, certainly on the billing reconciliations and all that kind of stuff. How many licenses am I buying from Microsoft, and does that match in with what I've got with my PSA tool?
Yeah. And do you have any just to expand on that too before I jump into a demo, is just for those MSPs that are currently using their accounting package to manage their recurring contracts and agreements and all their services, and they want to see the benefits of their PSA and really bring that in. What would you say the next steps for them would be to take in order to migrate those things? Because it can be sometimes a daunting task in itself. I see the benefit in managing my contracts and recurring services within my PSA, but I don't even know where to start. It's been working for us right now within our accounting package. And just because it's working for you now doesn't mean that it's the most efficient thing to do, or it's the right thing to do. Let's be frank, I'll call it out. How can they take those next steps? What do you think is the best implementation strategy just to get to the point where you can start reaping those benefits out of the PSA and get those, say, invoice line items, those recurring services, your agreements over to your PSA? What would you say the next steps would be?
Well, there's no sort of real import facility as such, right? You're not going to bring those invoice line items in as an import, well, unless you do it through an API or something like that. But typically, what you're going to do is you're going to need to set up the contracts or agreements or recurring invoices or whatever the PSA tool calls it. So you're going to need to set those up. You're going to need to bring those services in. Now, the services themselves, so things like Microsoft 365 and backup and antivirus and all those kind of things, that stuff's easy to get into the PSA tool, because that has most of those things are going to integrate with, every tool under the sun has some kind of integration that you can bring all those services in. But it's the building of the contract with those services in it, and that's where it's going to take some time to get that stuff in. So it's going to need to it's going to need somebody to set up the contract and have the contract going through a wizard or something like that. But it is a manual process. It is you have to make a decision to go, okay, I'm going to move all of these things out and put them into the PSA tool.
Yeah, and quite honestly, most PSAs have wizards or import functionalities to streamline that and make that as easy as possible. Because let's face it, it's pretty easy to migrate between. Well, I shouldn't say it's easy to migrate, but it's much easier nowadays to integrate between PSAs and transition and all that data over to one another. So no different than that of migrating that contractual information from your accounting package over to your PSA. So there are ways to get that over and give you peace of mind, so you're not pulling hair out come that first invoice cycle within your PSA. But as far as importing those things fairly straightforward, but like just mapping your cost of goods sold and those agreement line items, those contract line items to that of your billing tool, whether that be through a third party like an accounting package or through your PSA, it doesn't really matter. You obviously need to sync that back to your accounting package one way or another, which is, just be mindful of which integrations currently exist within your PSA. But again, this is where, it's there's no question that there is some manual effort to be had, just getting that all over to your PSA. But I think the benefits outweigh that effort, and you'll see the return on investment when it comes down to it. So that's great. Thank you so much, Tim, for covering all that stuff. I think this is a nice kind of segue into that of the synthesized billing platform. I'll touch on just a quick demo as to just, uh, talking about costs of services and making sure that you get paid for everything that you do. And, Chris, you mentioned earlier the importance of just having your costs per service within your PSA and keeping those updated. And this rings true in our billing module, because we effectively, once you pull in your vendor usage and do that cross comparison to what is currently within your PSA, this is where you're going to be able to see your net profit revenue overall per service offering. And I'll share that real second. I just want to highlight that because this rings true to what you were saying, in the fact that you want to see that those costs and their revenue, so you can make better business decisions into your resale stack and maximize those profits as best as possible. So this is where, as you update your costs and your list price within your service or product catalog within your PSA, pulling in that product usage from your vendors, either through a direct integration through our synthesized platform or through a CSV import. This is where you'll see something very similar on screen, where you then, if you're looking at your resale stack, maybe you have a user bundle, a security awareness bundle. If you itemize your services down to your antivirus, EDR, security awareness, and so on and so forth. Like, let's face it, on average, MSPs work with 15, 20 plus vendors, and then they could very well have several, if not dozens of SKUs that they resell to their customers. So reconciling those unit counts is becoming even more of a burden than it had previously, as that vendor stack, that resale stack continues to grow with security tools and whatever it may be. So this is where our synthesized billing module comes into play. So we not only pull in all of your recurring services, your contract line items, your additions on your client contracts or agreements within your PSA. So those numbers, those unit counts, are signified within the blue number for each of these service cards. And these service cards indicate, if we're looking at premium user support, this is a service on this particular customer contract or agreement. So we can then, as soon as we pull in that product usage, do that cross comparison. Okay, well, as of like the last 30 days, we actually trued up. We provisioned 5 more licenses. Currently, my PSA is showing 25. From my vendor usage, it's showing 30. This is where we can effectively reconcile that unit count for that particular client or that agreement and instantly right back to the PSA. So the idea here is that we're reviewing, we're reconciling, we're approving these things, and we can then draw light to even underperforming services, where we can then expand those open and see truly why are we at a loss. So going into that invoice cycle, you can then have greater visibility into your profitability. And this is where there's definitely a cross play between not only managing your client contracts within your PSA at a minimum, and then pulling in that into the synthesized billing module for you then to review and reconcile. So you, bottom line, get paid for everything that you do. You have invoice accuracy. And again, you're actioning these things, you're adjusting these things, you're setting prorations if you choose. You can add multiple prorations. This is where the power of our tool is really, truly apparent, is when you keep track of your costs and your list price and whatnot, so you can then better, understand and update and true up all your unit counts across your entire resale stack. So this is where, if you itemize your services on your agreements, or you are an MSP that is trending towards that of user or device or bundles, if you will, it doesn't matter. If it's a contract line item, if it's an addition on your agreement, we're going to be pulling that into synthesized billing for you to then review and reconcile. And then this is where, obviously, as we continue to expand our platform, this is where we're going to see even more direct integrations with the vendors that you work with. So what you see on screen is just a snapshot as to some of those vendors that are currently committed or that currently have a live integration with us, where we're automatically pulling in that product usage and for you then to review and reconcile, so you can maximize your profits and truly get paid for everything that you do, because it's hard enough running an MSP. We're in the business to help you as an MSP grow and make your life easier. So there's truly a benefit in managing those things within your PSA. And then this is where Synthesize, the Gradient platform, comes into play. So we're talking billing module. Obviously, we have a new module coming at the end of September, if you don't already know. It's our alert module. So again, this is where we're maximizing the use of your PSA, so you can then operationally mature and scale your business so you can maximize those profits. So this is like the direct link between us, Sondela. We're in the business of making your life easier so you can maximize those profits. And we're on a mission internally here at Gradient. We are on a mission to help MSPs, and our platform is truly, we're creating this ecosystem, if you will. So we have direct integrations with all of the vendor partners within the IT channel. So you as an MSP will then be able to choose, use, deploy any service that you want, and it seamlessly be integrated with your PSA or platform of choice. Currently, we integrate with 9 PSAs on the market. That list will continue to grow. So we're giving you, the MSP, a choice. And this is traditionally hasn't been there in the channel, where like you would be confined to a certain vertical stack. We don't want that. We want you to go out and choose, use, and deploy any service that you want, so you can then in turn choose the best of the best. Because let's face it, there's new security offerings, there's new documentation solutions, whatever it may be. There's lots of tools and vendors within the channel and solutions that are better suited to you and your customers. So we want to give you that freedom of choice. That's our big vision. But again, this is where our billing module comes into play. This is the importance of managing those things within your PSA comes to full fruition. So that just goes to extent as to why it's so important to, at the very least, manage your contracts to take full advantage of our billing module. And then in turn, as we grow our platform, this is where alerts, other solutions, other modules will come into the mix. Again, solely focused on helping you as an MSP, because we all know that it's hard enough running an MSP as it is. So we're trying to make that easy on you. So without we dived into a lot. We covered a lot within the last 50 minutes or so. I'm going to open it up into Q&A. Jonathan has a few questions here that we can address live. So Jonathan, you asked, does Gradient MSP integrate with Zen contract management or other contract management solutions? No, we do not integrate with Zen contract management just yet. I can definitely put that as a feature request, but this just kind of goes into our discussions today. Like, what's the importance of managing those within your PSA? And I think we kind of highlighted some of those things already, but we can definitely get into the nitty gritty some more with Chris in the future. But yeah, no integration. But again, this is quite honestly what we're talking about today, the importance of managing those contracts within your PSA. And if you don't have a PSA tool right now, maybe this is a chance for you to reevaluate that and then take a look at all the PSAs on the market. What's best suited for you and why? And this is where Chris' expertise and our expertise here at Gradient can definitely help with you in that when it comes to evaluating PSAs on the market and whatnot. But again, it's really important, as we said today, to manage those things within your PSA. Now, does Gradient MSP integrate with third-party solutions like GRC or TPRM, like governance, regulatory compliance, or third-party risk management? Currently, no, we do not. But again, we have one solution right now, the billing module, just designated towards just evaluating effectively pulling in product usage, pulling in your usage currently across your client contracts within your PSA, doing that cross comparison so you get paid for everything that you do. Our alert module, again, coming up at the end of September. There will be other modules and solutions coming to our platform too, seamlessly integrated with your PSA or platform of choice. But again, we don't currently have any GRC or TPRM integrations right now, but maybe in the future. Jonathan, if there is any other questions, you have my contact. By you can feel free to reach out to me at any time. But yeah, any closing thoughts there, Chris?
No, I think you've covered a lot. I think I work with a lot of MSPs that are kind of looking at this billing reconciliation and being able to figure out kind of how to get all of this stuff in. So I think something like your synthesized platform, I think, would be a really good thing for them. So yeah, but I think otherwise, I think it's pretty good. And yeah, nothing else from my side.
Yeah, and just to maybe elaborate on what you just said too, is like if you have a PSA and you have current integrations with your distro or other vendors, because let's face it, there are PSAs that have direct integrations with vendors, but they might not cover all of your vendors and you're still doing that manual reconciliation. This is where we exist to then audit those existing integrations that you have with your vendors, and then on top of that, streamline billing process for those that vendors or services that you traditionally manually reconcile right now within your PSA. So you can still streamline that and audit those vendors that you currently integrate. So again, you're just getting paid, ensuring that you have invoice accuracy and you're getting paid for everything that you do. And if you don't already know, well, our platform is free to try. It's free to sign up, get registered, get your PSA connected, get your feet wet with our platform. We do have a paid tier, but it's only when you want to take advantage of that second integration will you be paying as little as $99 a month. So drops in the bucket, and our platform will continue to grow to have more direct integrations. Keep a lookout at DataCon if you are attending there or virtually. Be on the lookout for some news, upcoming news from Gradient, some new and exciting stuff coming from there. I want to thank Chris for jumping on to this series of Nerdy Birdy, but the Nerdy Birdy will continue next month, the third week of October. and keep a lookout as far as what guest speaker or vendor, synthesized vendor that we will be showcasing then. But hopefully we'll see Chris and Sondela visit us in the near future again, because when we're talking PSA profitability, we only just touched a couple of things, but it's such a broad topic. And then this is where I then, it's a plug for Chris Sondela, his book PSA Profitability, the ultimate guide to maximizing profitability within your PSA. Encourage you to pick up that book. And again, there's lots of golden nuggets within there. It's just to for you as an MSP to grow and scale your business and really truly untap that raw potential that is within your PSA. And
sorry, and I was going to say,
go ahead.
I am actually going to be at DattoCon as well. So if there's
Hey,
anyone that's at at DattoCon, hunt me down. I'll be around. If you don't know who I am, then ask somebody, and I'm sure somebody will know who I am. And I'm normally hanging around the bars or the lobby or the
yeah.
Starbucks coffee or something. So I'll be around. Just come and hit me up, and let's grab some time and go through stuff. So
Yeah, taking the flight over the pond, and yeah, looking forward to it. Jonathan has a parting comment. Those are 3 categories of package software that I have run into recently that your comments caused me to remember. Well done. Awesome. Well, that's what we're all about here. This is a success-led webinar, and we truly just want to help you and expand on those burning questions that you have as an MSP, even if you're starting out. If you're an existing practice of 20 plus years, it doesn't matter. There's always room for improvement. And this is what this series is all about. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us. Thank you for all those that are viewing this. And we'll talk soon. Keep a lookout for the next Nerdy Birdie. And we will see you at DattoCon. Thanks so much, Chris, the Nerdy Birdie, aka Mr. PSA himself. Grab yourself a cuppa, and we will talk soon. Thanks so much, Chris. Take
thanks,
care.
Brian. Thanks for having
All
me.
right.
Speak soon. Cheers.
Bye now.
Bye. Bye.